But tonight I want to talk to you about depression. Depression. There's a lot of talk about this in our country, the subject of mental health. And I was doing a little bit of math on my own life this week as I was preparing for this. And I counted up 11 years of my life that I have had intense, serious, daily depression. 11 years. Just coming out of one that was 7 years long. So I have dealt with this a lot. And I have had to look into the Bible and pray to God and think deeply, more and more deeply about it and try to understand it. Any of you know anyone, or you don't have to say that you don't have to give away your own life, but know anyone who's struggled with depression? It's amazing how many people struggle with depression. So we want to start tonight. I want to start a series with you. We'll do 5 sessions on it. I'm doing, the first Sunday night of the month. So it'll be the first Sunday night of the month for 5 more months, 4 more plus tonight. And we want to talk about this from 5 different aspects. Tonight we're going to ask, what is depression? Trying to find it and understand what it is, and then look into the Bible to see if there's any in there. We want to ask, what causes it? That'll be the second session. What are the underlying issues? I don't know if you were here for my last session, but I talked about understanding the underlying issues in trial. And that video is on YouTube if you want to watch it. But most of the time, the issue at the top really isn't the problem. There's something deeper. So we want to talk about what are the deeper issues in depression. Then we want to talk about how to overcome it. How is it that we, over the long term, get out of depression? Number 4, we want to talk about how to live with it. Depression isn't something that goes away usually overnight. So while God is working out the issues in you, you have to learn how to cope with it now. How do I live with it now? How do I get through it now? And then finally, I want to talk about suicide. Suicide in the Bible. I've been asked a number of times over the years about suicide. Is it an unforgivable sin? And can a Christian actually do it? And that kind of thing. So I want to talk about suicide. A lot of suicides today. And usually suicides are directly connected to depression. Almost always. So we want to begin tonight by asking, what is depression? Let me give you a little bit more of a detailed definition. It is a frustration in one's desire for life to be better in the future. It is a frustration, and you got your notes there, you can fill in the blanks here. In your desire for things to be better in the future. Is that fair? Is that fair? The first thing you have to do to get past depression is start to understand what it is. It can be short-term, it can be long-lasting, depending on the person and the situation. Sometimes you just get down for a little while, you get a little blue for a few days or a week, and then you kind of get over it. But sometimes it lasts for years, doesn't it? In its worst form, it is a total loss of hope in the mind and in the heart. Total loss of hope. The key word to understanding depression is understanding the word hope. Hope. What is hope? Hope has to do with the future. Hope is the conviction or inner certainty, listen to the words, the conviction or inner certainty that things will not always be the way they are now. Is that fair? Isn't that what hope is? When Israel left Egypt, they were hopeful that things were going to be better. When they were wandering in the wilderness, they were hopeful that the land was still out there. As you get older and you get sick or you have problems in your marriage or in your home or with your children, you're hoping that things will get better. We can do almost anything. We can endure almost anything if we believe it's going to get better in the future. Is that fair? But once you lose hope, that's when depression comes in. Because hope is about the future, depression is about the future. Depression is about the future because hope is about the future. Because hope and depression are linked. Hope, depression is not directly about the past. Although the past definitely influences it. It's not actually about the past. It's not even about the present. You could have something happen to you in the past that's affecting your hope in the future, but the depression is because of the future. It's not because of the past. It's what you think is going to happen in the future. That's where the depression comes in. The depression is not even about now, a bad situation now. It's about what's going to happen to the bad situation in the future. Hope is about the future, therefore depression is about the future. When someone becomes depressed, they have lost hope in the future. If you are depressed today, this is why you are depressed. It's not because of what happened to you in the past, although that needs to be dealt with. It's not about the situation now, although that might need to be dealt with. It's about how you feel about things what they're going to be like in the future. And when you think they're not going to be good in the future, that's when you get depressed. Is that fair? Does that meet with your experience? So what does this loss of hope, what does this cause? Let's talk about some of the symptoms. You mentioned a little bit of them before. What does depression or the loss of hope cause? I'll go ahead and just erase this. It eliminates the drive for living. It eliminates the drive for living. Not just suicide. We're going to talk about suicide in a moment. But it causes you to believe that the situation is so bad and so hopeless that it'll never going to change. And there's nothing you can do to change it, so why do anything? Anybody ever woke up in the morning in the bed and just as soon as your eyes opened, you thought, I just don't want to do anything today? I have done that so many times. I just don't want to do it today. I can't do it today. The phrase that I came up with for my experience, how I feel and felt, was the dark hand. The dark hand. Because I wouldn't be looking for it, I wouldn't be thinking about it, but all of a sudden it felt like there was a dark hand that came up out of the floor and grabbed me right in the middle of my chest and pulled me down. Anybody ever felt something like that? There's that ball in there and it just feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. It pulls you down, it depresses you, and you don't want to do anything. There's no point in trying anymore. Just abandon all activity. It zaps your natural, God-given drive to carry on. I just don't want to do anything. And people think you're lazy. People think you're a complainer, that you're just making excuses. But I'm telling you, when that dark hand comes to get you, it is hard to get up. I remember waking up one time. We lived in North Carolina. I had, I think I told you, I had left my sales job and started my own full-time ministry and had taken all my savings to do that. I only lasted about a year and I ran out of money and I had to go back into sales. And I got a job. I've got souls under me, so I took the job. And I remember waking up one morning, and before I even opened my eyes, I felt like I was going to cry. Anybody ever felt that way? I'm just going to cry. I don't know why I want to cry. I just want to cry. And took all I could do. By the grace of God, I was able to, get up and go to work. I always have, but very, very dark. Lost motivation results in related symptoms. So we lose this drive for living, and then we lose our motivation. We don't want to do anything. Anybody ever done that? Lost your motivation for normal tasks and responsibilities? You got a list to do. You got things you got to do Monday morning, and you think about it all week, and I'm going to get up and get it done, and then you get up and you just can't. You just don't have any motivation to do it. You lose motivation for doing normal tasks and responsibilities. Motivation. irritability, anger and confusion. We talked about that one already. You already hit that one. Anger and confusion. Intense sadness and discouragement. There's my dark hand. In extreme cases, it can lead to suicide. And we're going to do a whole session on suicide. That's what depression is, isn't it? It's real, it's hard, and it can destroy you. It can destroy your life. So let's talk about the Bible. Let's go into the Bible. You would be stunned, and maybe you already know this, how much depression there is in the Bible. So I want to show you something. Let's turn to the book of Proverbs. I'm going to teach you something pretty cool tonight about Hebrew poetry as we look at a few proverbs on depression and continue sort of our definition. We want to continue to look at it, what it is, and how it happens. Proverbs 15:13. A merry heart makes a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken. A merry heart. The word merry means joyful or glad. All right, so what's the heart? The heart's the inmost person. A happy, glad, innermost person makes a cheerful countenance. The countenance, the word means face. So when you're inside, you're happy, then your face is happy. Okay? But by sorrow of heart, the spirit is broken. Sorrow of heart, when your heart is down, that dark hand, the discouragement, the sadness, the spirit is broken. Now here's an interesting thing. Have you ever read Proverbs, any of the Proverbs, and thought something looked like it was missing? This doesn't seem to connect exactly, does it? We've got a merry heart makes a cheerful countenance, a face, but the sorrow of heart breaks the spirit. It would seem like it should say, a merry heart makes a cheerful countenance, but sorrow of the heart makes a sad countenance. Doesn't it seem like that? So let me teach you why this is so. You want to learn something cool? All right, I'm going to teach you something cool. Hebrew poetry is some of the richest poetry ever written. And what they do is the writers intentionally leave off things. So there are actually three things that the poet here is talking about, the writer is talking about. But he mentions two at a time, and they connect. Let me show you. A merry heart, we'll start over here. Hopefully some of you can see this. Merry heart. Okay, a merry heart leads to cheerful countenance. I'm just going to say cheerful face. Okay, you see that? Merry heart, that's what he's saying. Okay, but a sorrowful heart what does it do? Breaks the spirit. Look at this. Okay. What's that? Yeah. Yes. It means struck, broken, or wounded. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we got the heart here. We've got countenance over here, and then we've got something in the middle. And here's what the writer's doing. The writer is intentionally leaving this out and this out for you to think about it and fill it in. It's a rich kind of poetry. So, following along, a merry heart, what does it do to the spirit? What's the opposite of breaks it? Builds the spirit. See that? Builds spirit. Okay. And when you have a sorrowful heart and you break the spirit, what does that lead to? A sad countenance, a sad face. Do you see how that works? So we see here some connections that help us to begin to understand the relationship between things on the outside, this is the outer over here, and the inside. Okay? So a cheerful face is because the Spirit is built up, the Spirit in us, it doesn't mean the Spirit of God. The Spirit is built up, and that's because our heart has been made merry. When we're sad, our spirit is broken, and we have a sorrowful heart. You see how that works? That's how Hebrew poetry works. So if you're reading the Proverbs or the Psalms and it seems like something's left out, it's intentional, so you will have to use your brain and think about it and figure it out. Okay? All right? Isn't this true, though? If I'm happy inside, that goes through to the outside. If I'm sad on the outside, that comes back to the inside. All right? So with depression, where we're down here on this bottom half, these are the things we've got to work on. We've got to go back and figure out why the spirit inside of us is broken and why we're sorrowful. And then that will result in a change in our disposition. And we're going to talk about how to do that. Is everybody with me? That's a little complicated, but it's really cool when you get it. So let's go and look at another one. Proverbs 12:25, and we're going to make a couple of points on this one. We're going to see a nice little connection here to how we start to think about how to get past depression. Anxiety in the heart causes depression. But a good word makes it glad. Let's look at this one. Anxiety in the heart causes depression. So, an anxious heart, what does it cause? Depression. There's the word we're talking about, isn't it? Depression in this Hebrew word here means to depress, crouch, or fall down. Isn't that what we said that depression is? All right? Anxiety, I think we all know what that is. All right? But, what's the rest of it? A good word makes it glad. So, good word and anxious heart don't work. So, we'll go over here, we'll put up good word. Makes it glad. Makes happiness. Okay, so what are we missing here? So let's talk about the good word for a moment. Let's talk about that, what that means. That means that could be something someone says to you that's good, but it can also be an event. Good word, good happening, good event, good circumstances, good change in my life. When something good goes your way, when you get the medicine that you need, it's like, whoa, all of a sudden, that's a good word, makes me happy. See, I'm worried here. What's the opposite of being anxious? We say relieves anxiety. Let's say relieves anxiety. So a good word, something good that happens, relieves the anxiety in my heart. How much of depression is caused by worry? If you analyze it, you'll find that it's almost all worry. And that makes me glad. So good events, good happenings, good word, relieves anxiety, makes me glad. So what makes my heart anxious and leads to depression? Bad news. Bad word, bad news, bad situation. Everybody that's depressed is in some bad situation. In their head or in their life, they're in a bad situation. All right, so we see here that if we're going to deal with this depression, this sadness, this inner sadness, this loss of drive for the future, this loss of hope in the future, we have to work backwards. So here's my depression. Now I have to work backwards and see, why am I anxious? What is it I'm anxious about? And then I have to work back here to circumstances. Circumstances. I'm just going to make that short. All right? So, what we find in this verse is, this is why I taught you about Hebrew poetry, so you can see these connections and we can work back through them. The Bible says that you should be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You're not just going to wish depression away. It's not just going to go away. You have to use your mind, learn and grow, and then God will help you change it. Okay? But here is what we see. The key to overcoming depression is one, two, or both of these. Changing circumstances, because they can lead to depression, and or changing my heart. Changing the way the inner man sees and deals with those circumstances. So I've either got to work on the circumstances, I've got to work on the way I see those circumstances and I deal with them, or both to get rid of the depression. But sometimes our depression, let me tell you one of the things that's driven my depression over the years. I have been trying to get out of secular work for 20 years. I have wanted to be full-time in ministry for 2 decades. And every time I have tried to do it, it has failed. And I've always been put back into a job I didn't want to do anymore. So I had these circumstances that were causing me to be anxious. And I tried to get out of them so many times, I could never get out of it. So I began to just draw down and just shut down. I'll never be able to do this. I will always be stuck in this crappy job. My life has no meaning and no purpose, and what's the point? All right? Now, that sounds a little immature, doesn't it? That's okay. That's okay. You're right. You're right. No, but listen. All right? Most people's depression is going to be, to some extent, a pity party. Okay? It will be. Yours is going to seem silly to other people, but to you, it's really, really significant. All right? So I tried to change the circumstances so I could get the depression gone. And God said, no. I don't want the circumstances changed. I'm going to let you try, and then you're going to fail. And I'm going to let you try, and you're going to fail. And you're going to get to the point where you can't try anymore. You just don't have the resources to do it anymore. And you're going to have to deal with what I am trying to deal with in you. Remember the last session I talked to you about? God creates the trial, and He puts you in it so you will have to deal with the issues where? In the heart. So what He has been doing with me that has brought me out of this is He has changed the way I think about my circumstances. And the depression's starting to lift. But it's taken years. It's taken years. Do you see how that is? So we're not going to talk about exactly how to do this tonight, but there it is. You need to start looking at what's under the surface if you are depressed. One of the things that we do that's an error is we go right to a psychiatrist and we try and get medicine. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes medicine's not needed. I'm not saying that. But if God has put you in a position and a difficult spot so that you are sad and discouraged, He has done it for a reason. And if you use medicine to keep you from seeing those things, they will never get fixed and the medicine won't work. In the end, the medicine won't bring you what you want it to bring. Because God is not going to let it work. Because He is trying to get inside of here to change you. Does that make sense? So there it is. There's a little few verses on it. Now let's look at an example. My favorite example in the Bible of a depressed man is Psalm 88. I want to read the whole thing to you. A prayer for help in despondency, a psalm of the sons of Korah, to the chief musician set to Mahalath Lenath, a contemplation of Heman the Ezrahite. O Lord, God of my salvation, I have cried out day and night before you. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry. For my soul is full of troubles, and my life draws near to the grave. I am counted with those who go down to the pit. I am like a man who has no strength, adrift among the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, who remember you no more, and who are cut off from your hand. You have laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness, in the depths. Your wrath lies heavy upon me, and you have afflicted me with all your waves. You have put away my acquaintances far from me. You have made me an abomination to them. I am shut up, and I cannot get out. My eye wastes away because of affliction. Lord, I have called daily upon you. I have stretched out my hands to you. Will you work wonders for the dead? Shall the dead arise and praise you? Shall your loving kindness be declared in the grave, or your faithfulness in the place of destruction? Shall your wonders be known in the dark, and your righteousness in the land of forgetfulness? But to you I have cried out, O Lord, and in the morning my prayer comes before you. Lord, why do you cast off my soul? Why do you hide your face from me? I have been afflicted and ready to die from my youth. I suffer your terrors. I am distraught. Your fierce wrath has gone over me. Your terrors have cut me off. They came around me all day long like water. They engulfed me altogether. Loved one and friend you have put far from me, and my acquaintances into darkness. There's a sad man right there. But let's look at this. Look at the sadness and despair that he has. Verse 3, my soul is full of troubles. My life draws near the grave. I am adrift among the dead. This is a man who has lost all hope, isn't it? He blames God for his predicament. Verse 6, you have laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness, in the depths. Your wrath lies heavy upon me. You have afflicted me. This is common, isn't it? When your life starts to fall apart on you. And it goes on for a long, long time. Something that I noticed about this in Job chapter 3 is the same. If you want to go and read another man who's absolutely despondent. You know, we talk about Job and we almost forget that he was a real living man. And his children died all on the same day. And he lost his home in the same day. And he lost all his wealth in the same day. And then he got sick for months. And in Job chapter 3, he writes about it. And he talks about, why didn't I die when I was born? That takes a long time. It took me a long time. It probably took the last 7-year stint. It probably took me 3 or 4 years before I ran out of my own energy to deal with it. Do you know what I mean? I had faith, I had confidence in God, but it was chipped away slowly and slowly and slowly, and then it was gone. And it took years. This man's been suffering for years. And he blames God and he feels deserted. Wasn't that, someone said that earlier as one of the things that depression is? Who said that? Being alone, deserted. Faye, yes. See how alone he feels? But in fact, was he alone? He wasn't in fact alone, but he felt so completely alone. One of the things that must be changed here in the heart is this idea that God has abandoned us when we are sad, when our life is falling apart. Because in point of fact, Heman is wrong. He is wrong. Job is wrong. You are wrong. I am wrong. God has not deserted. In fact, God has created the situation out of love because He sees the deeper issues in you that He needs to fix. Depression, here's the thing you got to get. Depression is no different than any other trial. No different. It's no different in its design and in overcoming it than a great trial like cancer or divorce or a death in the family or a sin trial. You see, we are believing a lie. Let me tell you a great lie. A great lie you are believing in the United States of America. A great lie. You are believing that there are some types of trials, some types of difficulties, some types of issues over which God has no power. You're believing the lie. Addiction, opioid addiction, alcohol addiction. Oh, we don't know. We don't do that. I've got to go to my 12-step program. I got to do my 12-step. That's how I'm going to. No, let me talk to you about Jesus. I don't want to hear about Jesus. I got to go to my 12-step program. Homosexuality. Oh, I'm born this way. There's nothing. God can't do anything about this. Transgender. I don't believe I'm a man. I believe I'm a woman. God can't do anything about this. So I've got to go to a drug, or I've got to go to the government, or I've got to go somewhere else to get this help because God can't fix this. Depression is that way. We think we've got to go to the world psychiatrist. We got to go to somebody who's man-centered, godless, to tell us all the things that are wrong in our life. But if you start off with the wrong foundation, you're going to get the wrong answers, aren't you? The problem in depression is not always chemical imbalance, but it can be. I'm not saying that it can't be. You would expect that in a fallen world, that some people would have chemical issues. But by and large in America, with all the godlessness and all the lies and all the hate and all the sin, all the parents splitting up, all the abuse of the fathers and the mothers, all the bullying at school, all the drug abuse and the sexual perversion, you're going to end up with a lot of depressed people. And Christ is the only one who has the answer. Because He's the only one that can get down in here and fix it. The suffering of depression is intended by God to accomplish the same kinds of blessings in us that every other form of suffering is designed to accomplish. Depression can lead to blessing. Because if we do it right, if we deal with these issues, where do we end up? We go back and we get these things fixed. Our anxiety is relieved, and happiness returns.